everyone, welcome to another chunk of the top 100 for the Broken Meeple. Yes, we are finally breaking into the top half of my top 100. I've already talked about 50 great games that I love to bits, love to play. Now we're really getting into the creme de la creme of that top 100. 50 games that were good enough to make my top half of my favourites. Now, just a little caveat before we get started. I do live on a new build estate. There is a little bit of construction work that goes on during the day, as this is a weekday. I've got the week off, so you may hear some occasional noise in the background, but I'll do my best to drown it out. I've done my best to drown it out already. Hopefully it won't interfere. That's what noise removal was for, so we'll see if it makes a difference. But like I say, just that minor warning. I will look for it in the editing, but you'll see for yourself. So, already talked about 50 games. Let's get on with it. My 50 to 41. My number 50, I hate. Nah, I'm only kidding. I do love this game. The reason I hate it is because it edged out Citadels for me out of the top half. I was really like, which one do I prefer to play? It's a toss-up. I could really take or leave either. And I was really heartbroken that Citadels didn't make the top half. But my number 50 goes, rightfully so, to Isle of Skye from Chieftain to King, or whatever rubbish you want on the subtitle. Nobody cares about the subtitle. But Isle of Skye was done by, if I'm pronouncing the name right, Alexander Pfister. Is that his name? It's got a P on the front of it, I'm a bit uncertain. But his games are hit and miss with me. I've already stipulated that I will not touch Mombasa because it just looks horribly boring, as boring as anything to me. And I have reviewed Great Western Trail. It's okay, but I don't get the hype surrounding it. It's not for me. I don't get the whole deck buildy thing with ninja cows not popping up when you want to go to a festival, and it takes too long to play, it takes too long to teach. It's not for me. But other people love it. It's a hugely popular game, so hey, credit to the guy. That's the whole point. This is my favourite of his designs though, Isle of Skye. Nice, simple. Whether it's gateway game or not, I'd be hard pressed to call it gateway, but it's like fairly light. It's almost it's at that borderline level. But in Isle of Skye, it's kind of a mix of auctions and Carcassonne, because you are building a nice little map in front of you, and you're trying to collect like symbols of varying types. You're trying to fulfill these different objectives that score at different times throughout the game, which is really cool. But what I quite like is the auction system where you bid on tiles that other people are holding, but you've also got to opt up 2 of your tiles for auction. It's like, I don't want to get rid of these. Shall I price this one up so much that no one else will buy it, but then run the risk that somebody will buy it and I lose out on the money, and various other matters like that. It's fairly straightforward. You can get it wrapped up with 2 to 3 players in 60 minutes without any trouble. There's no reason it should take more than 90, even with AP players. I don't often want to play this with 5, but it can work with 5. Personally, like I say, as with most games, 3's the sweet spot, but I could play this with 4 any time of the week. I do like how you build a map in front of you though. That's always been a big thing of mine, creating something in front of you. And even though it's weird that you don't have to have the roads linking up in this one like you do in Carcassonne, that's a small minor bugbear for me. But it is cool that everybody's map will look different. It's nice and vibrant and colourful, and like I say, it's a straightforward, borderline, gateway level Euro, and certainly my pick of Alex's designs. Even if I'm not a fan of his heavier stuff, certainly like his light stuff. So, 50 from Isle to Skye. Sorry, Isle of Skye. It's a subtitle. It's putting me off. Isle of Skye dropped 5 places, so it was actually fairly steady. This one has actually taken quite a drop from last year. In fact, it has fallen a full 33 places. This was like near the very top of the list last year, and it has dropped a bit. Not because I don't love it. I mean, it's still in the top half of my top 100. It's just doesn't hit the table as often as I would like, because trying to get people into this theme is very difficult. On top of that, if you're a sort of player who's not very good with multi-use cards, then it can throw you for a bit of a loop in the AP thing, because you sometimes struggle to figure out what exactly you're meant to be doing in the game in order to do well. But it's a solid Euro, and one that I didn't think I would like. This, I think, was number 1 on my unexpected surprises or my exceptions to the rule, I don't know, but it was certainly high up on there. And that is Founding Fathers. This is a solid Euro by the Christian Leonard and Jason Matthews. They do a lot of these like sort of politically themed Euro games, and this one's my pick of them so far. Founding Fathers, for some reason, I know I'm not a history nut, and I certainly know very little about history or have much interest in it. But the US Constitution's an interesting part of history, and even though my knowledge of the actual making of the Constitution is very limited, if anything, I've learned a fair bit from playing this game, but it's not the reason why I like it. The reason I love it is that multi-use card thing I mentioned. You have cards that have 3 different aspects to each one of them, and you only end up with about 3 or 4 max in your hand any one time, so you've got to be very selective about what you do, but you'll constantly be refreshing your hand, so you've got new options every turn. But the way that the voting goes back and forth in this is very thematic to how this constitution would have been formed. You are getting the delegation states to vote yay or nay on articles, and for endgame scoring purposes, you want certain articles to pass and some not to. So you're constantly like, well, this time I want this to pass, this time I don't. And then even halfway during a round, your tactics might change. You wanted the vote to go ahead, and then you realise, oh, this card could give me a lot of points if I get this one to fail. I could live with that, because that one will pass instead, and I'll be alright. In fact, I'm changing. I'm going to change the votes to no straight away. Sorry, I hit my water glass. And it was like that whole back and forth thing of how the game state can change dramatically, and sometimes even end before you even know it. There's one card that just literally says round ends, which irks some people, but personally, I like the fact that that could potentially pop up. And there is one card that stops it entirely, so it's just a case of, timing. But the history is very strong in this, the theme is very strong in this, the look is average, it's not great, but the graphic design is easy to understand, and I just love how you've got different tactics that you can employ at any one time. This is not a strategic game, this is very much, I feel, more a tactical game, and with multi-use cards, and I love it. Granted, it's hard to get this one to the table, there's only so many people I can interest in this theme, but when it does hit the table, I have a blast. So, 49, Founding Fathers. For my 48, we have a new entry to the list. This is actually a fairly recent game that I've only been playing since about, I'd say, April time? Yeah, April time I think was the first time I played it. But it's gotten a lot of plays and it's gone down very well with pretty much every group I've shown it to. Granted, 1 or 2 people have tried to come up with weird mathematical reasons why this game doesn't work and failed miserably at it. But, the context of this party game is great. There was an old game called Categories. I don't like categories. It was too competitive, you had too many arguments about the words, the timed aspect was very tense, and yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I played it a lot with the family because they wanted to play it. This one though, Hive Mind, is categories in reverse. Instead of trying to come up with words, or like phrases and that, or answers that are different from everyone else, you're actually trying to come up with answers that are the same as everyone else. So your question might be, name 3 names one would give their newborn son, or something like that. And, somebody might put Bob, Percy, and Ralph. Another person will put David, James, and Matthew. But the idea is that you want to be the same as others. So you're not only thinking about what answers work, but also, would they pick that? Are people going to know this? And that element of thinking is fun enough in itself, because you'll think, oh, that answer's great. But I'm the only one who's likely to know this. So it's actually a bad answer. I need to come up with something that's really common. And it doesn't matter if the answers are factually correct. They could be completely wrong. You might say, name 3 vegetables, and you go, piranha. Completely wrong. But if someone else says piranha, you still get points. And it does lead to a good few laughs. But the questions are very varied. It isn't just simply name 3 vegetables. There's some interesting ones in here. There's a ton of them. Great replay value, and you could always just make up your own. It even says so on the card, that are all double-sided. There are a couple of caveats with this though. It can go a bit long, I have to admit, with a lot of players. So what I recommend is the boundaries that they have on the board to act as a catch-up mechanism. Take those out for a starter. Someone loses, they lose. It's a party game. What does it matter? It's only a loser in this game. There's no winners. And also, the track where the queen bee goes, that dictates how many people drop down if they lose the round. Fast forward her to the central part where all the stuff is like 1, 2, or 3 people go down, and start from there. because for a while you're on this singular track which is pretty much entirely just one person goes down, and that bit takes forever. So those two things in mind, they're easy house rules that I implement just to speed up the game, but the game itself, the fact that everybody is going, oh yes, name 3 things that are cold. Ice! What? Come on! You know, as everyone is arguing about not necessarily whether the answer is right, but they just can't believe that others didn't put the same answer they did. And in return, others like myself are sort of going, it's like, okay, what have you got for 3 things that are cold? How did I not think of ice? And this just leads to such great laughs. So this is not getting the buzz that it deserves. You know, it came out, it's fairly quiet on the whole like board game buzz, but seriously, get a chance to try this one out. I will bring it to a lot of Portsmouth, Petersfield and Southampton game nights, so if you're coming to one of those game nights with me, I will bring it, I will show you it. This is a great, underrated laugh. Hive Mind 48. My number 47 literally has only dropped 1 place since last year. It's remaining fairly steady. I have a feeling it will start to drop as time goes on, purely because it doesn't hit the table as often as I would like. But this is going into my favourite genre, which is cooperatives. I love cooperative games. They are easily my favourite genre. There's no bad feelings amongst people being too competitive. You're working together. There's teamwork. The thematic nature of a lot of co-op games is really, really strong. Granted, alpha player syndrome can be an issue. But most people I play with don't tend to suffer from alpha player syndrome. Maybe I'm just quite lucky. You know, I play with a lot of people who can suffer from AP in contrast. But certainly, the co-ops I just love. This one is one of the hardest co-ops in existence. And it is Ghost Stories. You are 4 monks trying to beat off ghosts and save your village. All the village tiles that you're on have special abilities you can use. All the ghosts have nasty debuffs that they put on you, and you can basically collect items and do all sorts. With the White Moon expansion, which I have in here, you can do all sorts of other crazy stuff, like collect artifacts, summon like a demi-goddess or whatever to act as a protective shield, and of course you have even worse ghosts, but you have more cool stuff as well. It's a seriously fun co-op game. Now, it's stupidly hard. You roll a fair amount of dice, and even though you mitigate them, it still has that luck element. But even if you're having good luck, this game is hard. I mean, literally, you want a game that like slaps you around or something. This one is literally like, oh, this is a nice game, Ghost Stories. Take the lid off the box. It's literally slapping you before you've even started setting the thing up. That's how hard this is, and that's on initiation mode. This can go up to hell difficulty. Hell? I want to play a game. Seriously. Is anyone actually beating this on hell difficulty? I want to know, and I want a time-lapse video of you doing it, because I can't believe anyone's beaten this on hell. Not without some serious divine intervention. But even on initiation level, this is still a big challenge, but I still really enjoy it. It really encourages teamwork. The production quality and the colours in this are great. The artwork is brilliant. It's a really cool co-op game that has stood the test of time, because this has been out for quite a while, but doesn't get a lot of love these days. But if someone has it, recommend you give it a try. So my number 47, Ghost Stories. My number 46 has dropped 15 places, again mainly just because it's hard to actually find the time to play. It is a long, involved Ameritrash game, but it is a great one. Sadly, this one will be out of print, I think, until the end of time, because Games Workshop no longer works with Fantasy Flight. But it's going to remain in my collection, won't get played very often, but it will be a blast, an absolute blast, every time I do. And that is Warhammer, heavy box, Warhammer 40,000 Forbidden Stars. This is basically my Twilight Imperium free in my collection. Spoiler alert, it's not on the list. It's like I say, I'm looking forward to the 4th edition, but it's a huge game. It's an event game, and it's hard to get to the table. This one, though, is that little bit easier. Granted, there's a lot to it. It will be a long game, especially with 4 players. I prefer this with 2. Certainly with 3, I like it. 4, I will play, but it's going to be an event. And I would prefer that everybody knew what they were doing. but it's a great strategic wartime game where you are building ships and settling space stations on planets. You're building up your forces, you're going out and attacking everyone else, and you have this really cool combat card system with your upgrades and your battles, so like your battle tactics that you can chop and change as the game goes on, and every race feels very different. You play the Orcs, you're playing a very different game to if you're playing the Eldar, for example. Really cool, great components, great miniatures, great art. Basically, everything in this game is great. It's just very long, and it is also hard to get to the table for that reason. But I love it when it does hit the table. So it's dropped a bit for that reason, but Forbidden Stars, still fantastic. Number 45 has dropped 33 places, and yeah, that was high, wasn't it? I mean, 33, this used to be, I think, my 12 last year, and it's dropped a lot. Again, mainly just because it doesn't hit the table often, but also because when it does hit the table, I'm usually teaching it, which means I'm forced to use the base game only. I like this with the expanded cards. But this, besides looking gorgeous, has my favorite dice of all time. These huge boulder dice that you roll, they make huge amounts of noise, they're custom made, and they're I love to throw them. That is, of course, you know what I'm talking about, Seasons. Seasons is a great card game where you are wizards trying to outdo each other in a tournament. It takes place over 3 years, but the time it takes to finish the game depends on how fast that timer track goes around all the 4 seasons of the year. You might have a really slow winter, you might have a really speedy summer, and of course, as each season passes, different elements that you use for your spells, so the magic like air, earth, fire and water, I think, and they become rarer and more common depending on what season you're in. Very thematic, very cool. I like the expanded cards though, not necessarily expansion rules where they chop and change the game and add that weird moon element and stuff like that. I'm just talking about having those more in-depth cards. I'm forced to use the base game a lot and sometimes not draft because I'm teaching this, and that lets the game down a little bit. You really want to draft and you really want to have those expanded cards in. But I'll just get them out right now. I gotta hold them. I don't care about the boxing. I need them. I need to hold these. I do love these dice. So good. So good. Look at them. They are huge. Huge and loud. But I get a kick out of these dice. Just rolling them every time. It's like, oh, I get to roll the yellow dice now. I know, I'm such a child, but there's just something about big, boulder dice that look this good. No other game has come close to giving me such a cool tactile feeling as these dice, and it deserves credit for that alone. But certainly recommend you give it a try, even if it is just the base game only. That is Seasons. My number 44 I just got recently actually in a Kickstarter. Now of course I've played it before then. I played the base set, but the base set didn't have as much variety as I would like. I love the game. I think it's one of the best solo games I've played for simplicity and also for theme in a sense. But the base game didn't have as much variety and I didn't want to get the expansion packs there because they were hard to find. Then the Kickstarter from Van Ryder Games came out and said, right, we're giving you this expansion, a box to hold everything, you can have the base game again, you can have all the expansion packs, basically you can have everything that we've done to date, and future besides. So I sold my base game and waited patiently for the Kickstarter for Hostage Negotiator. Hostage Negotiator, this is Crime Wave, this was the Kickstarter box that I received recently, you might have seen photos of it. But I really like this as a solo dice game. You are a hostage negotiator. There has been an abduction and there are hostages at stake, and basically through the use of conversation cards you are rolling dice trying to sway the conversation in your favour with the person doing the abduction. And everything that you do, everything you do just feels like you're in one of those cool movies where you watch the person at the end of the phone chatting to the guy at the other end and it's all the witty dialogue between the two. I like those films actually because you get that really cool banter between the two protagonists, and you don't know what's going to happen. It's really uncertain. The guy might just snap at a moment and kill a hostage, or a hostage might try and escape and it causes unrest. You never really know what's going to happen when the film is done right in that respect. This game does the exact same thing. You have event cards that trigger that do certain things like that, and all the abductions are very unique, especially with the expansions that you get in this now. You might have one abduction, which is a guy who really just wants medical fees for his dying son. You know, he doesn't want to hurt people, but he's desperate. He has to try it. You then might get a guy who's a complete raving lunatic and will just kill someone at a moment's notice if you push him even slightly the wrong way. The expansion packs that have been done by different designers have thrown in lots of cool stuff like a cult that you've got to beat up, twins, a CEO of a massive business company, the children of parents. Yeah, there's all sorts of cool stuff in this. And yes, okay, there's a random element because you're rolling dice. But it's unpredictable. And that's what hostage negotiation is all about. You can't predict how a hostage negotiation is going to turn out. So the theme in this is strong for that respect. Yes, it's random, but the game takes about 30 minutes max. You know, is that so bad, random, when it's a short game? I don't like randomness in long games, but in a short game with dice, what does it matter? Rules are straightforward, you know, it's easy to pick up, but I think it's an underrated solo game. One that I was willing to pay the ends of the earth for the Kickstarter, like fancy box and dividers and that. I love it, can't wait to get it to the table again. So, Hostage Negotiator moves onto my list as a new entry. And number 43 has actually climbed 14 places since last year. That's quite a jump. But I'm not entirely certain why it's climbed. I think maybe it's just because it's getting played more often these days because the modules are starting to come out again. But I really loved it when I played the original Asylum module in this game. This was Space Cowboy's great immersive adventure called Time Stories. The original module I still think is the best. But this is like a card-based, immersive story-based game where you are time traveling back to a period in time trying to prevent some anomaly. And the time periods that you go to are really varied, the enemies you face are really varied, but the storytelling is brilliant. You'll go to a location, there will be a panoramic thing with this brilliant artwork, and you will choose a card, you'll read the back of it yourself and understand the story element. You might have to do combat, you might have to do diplomacy, you know, dexterity, whatever. You do little checks like a roleplay game, and you carry on through the story. The choices that you make will define the rest of your storyline as you go through, and the modules have been very varied and very fun. Granted, there are some I like better than others. You know, I wasn't a fan of Prophecy. Under the Mask was a little bit underwhelming. Lumen Fide recently was alright, apart from some combat things, but I liked the original Asylum. Marcy Case was really good. Expedition Endurance was really good, and I'm really looking forward to the I think it's called Estrella Drive, or is it something else? I can't remember. It's like based in a kind of like film 50s like movie studio time, I think. But it's also got like rated mature audiences on it. As if this game didn't already have a bit of a mature rating. To actually put the label on it, that's really got me psyched as to what creepy stuff they're going to put into this. You know, because it's like film studio thing, maybe it's going to be, I hate to say it, but, you know, sexual references, who knows. But certainly I'm looking forward to it. Every time a new module comes out, I get hold of my girl mates from the game shelf, and, you know, we play through this as a free player, and we've been enjoying it ever since. It's also a cool way for us to meet up, because we live about 90 minutes away from each other. So, Time Stories has risen up the list. Whether it will carry on that way kind of depends on the modules, you know. The modules only come out so often, and it's hit and miss as to whether they're brilliant or so-so. I haven't really seen any bad ones, but, you know, it does go up and down. But I still really love it just for the ingeniousness, the innovation that this game provides for a story-based experience. Time Stories. My 42 has risen a whole 18 places since last time. The expansions have been making this game better and better for me, and recently the Winds of the Sultan expansion has really elevated this for me. Providing I don't play this with 5 players. Yeah, I'm not going to go on that rant again. I've already been taking some flack for that because people sort of go, oh, I love playing this with 5 players. Fine. If you love playing it with 5 players, go and play it with 5 players. I don't mind. I hope it makes you happy. That's the whole point of this. But I just find that 5 players is just too much downtime for the length of the game, which is extended for having the extra player, even though the meeples stay the same. In case you have no idea what I'm talking about from that review, go watch it. You know, you can see me having a good rant, but 5 Tribes is the game I'm talking about. I still really love this game. I just prefer to play it with 2 to 4 players. 3 ideally, 2's fine, 4 only if you know the game, 5 never doing that again. But the expansions that have come out for this have really elevated it. You've now got 6 tribes, yeah, haha, and all 6 tribes work together really well. The Whims of the Sultan expansion added these objective cards in where you go to these big cities, they get you points, but you also draw a card where if you can meet the objective, you cash it in and get more money, more points. And all those objectives are really varied and will change from game to game. Really enjoyed that expansion. It's kicked this one up a severe notch for me. Otherwise, I think it would be on a similar level to Yamatai, where that was on the list, which is still high, but it would have been a little bit further down. But those expansions, particularly the Whims of the Sultan one, have really pushed this one up. It's that old Mancala mechanic of picking up the coloured meeples and moving them around this grid of tiles, and wherever you drop the meeples dictates, the last meeple dictates the ability you trigger based on the meeple colour. Basically, all the different tribes do different things. It's a little hard to explain, but it looks sublime. Days of Wonder, production quality, what do you expect? It looks colourful, looks busy. Yes, it is definitely one of their most thinky Euro games they've ever done, but it's not too difficult to get into the rules. There's just a lot to think about and consider because it's very tactical. You can't be strategic in this game because the board state will change a lot and you can get messed over. So you've got to think on the fly, and that can lead to some AP issues. But that aside, when you play with the right people, this is a blast and I love it. 5 Tribes, my number 42. And finally, my number 41. This is a game that I believe has only risen 3 places since last year. It's been pretty steady, but this is possibly my favourite racing game. I'm going to say... That's not racing, that's not racing, that's not racing, that's not racing. Yep, I'm pretty confident, well, we'll soon find out. Yep, I think this is my favourite racing game, my 41, and that is the light gateway racing game, Snowtails. Yeah, this doesn't necessarily appear as favourite in some other people's lists for racing games, but I really enjoy this one. Pure gateway level. You just have 3 cards that you play a turn, max of 3 cards, 2 for your front dogs, 1 for your brakes. Add and subtract as necessary, that's your speed. You have to circumnavigate, corners and hazards and trees and that sort of thing, and obviously your speed has to adjust to compensate for those. So you've only got so many cards in your hand that you can use, and as the sleigh gets busted up, you have even less options a turn. It's great fun. You can get some one-sided victories, but you can get some close finishes as well. It really just depends on the players and how willing they are to just push that limit a little bit to try and get ahead. Sometimes you push the limit too much and it hurts you in the later game. Sometimes slow and steady wins the race. But you can design the track however you like. I think the theme is really cute, having lovely little husky dogs. I love husky dogs. And, it's variable tracks. Nice looking, the production quality is pretty solid actually. It's very striking on the table, but I really enjoy this one. It's a great one to teach, really easy to teach, plays up to 5 players fine, maybe goes a little bit long with 5, but if people know what they're doing, 3 and 4 works brilliantly. Not sure I'd play it with 2, but yeah, 3 and 4, I like getting this one to the table. It's a very easy, very cool racing game, and definitely one that you should try out, especially if you're new to games and you just want to try something with a racing element. Maybe I might put this one on a starting tile segment at some point. I don't know. We'll see. I've already just done one recently for Throat Punch Lunch. So that's it for this one. 41, Snowtails. So that's it for another chunk of 10 for my top 100. As always, give me the feedback on video in terms of technical stuff to do with the video, or whether you like these games, don't like them, should they be higher or lower. I like to engage with the community, so I'm more than happy to take comments and see what you think about the games I put on this. I think there's only 4 more videos to go before we wrap this up, as well as some near misses and some honourable mentions, but hopefully you've been enjoying the journey so far, and hopefully you're going to enjoy the rest of it to come. So with all these games I've mentioned, including your aforementioned Snowtails, doesn't matter if it's hot or cold weather, in this case, rather hot at the moment, they're still only games. See you soon, and take care, have a nice day.